In life, we often expect dramatic change to happen through large, singular events. We imagine overnight success, instant breakthroughs, or a moment where everything shifts. But what if I told you that real transformation happens in much smaller, less noticeable steps? What if instead of looking for that one big leap, you focused on getting just 1% better each day? That's where the true power of improvement lies, compounding tiny, consistent changes over time. It's the small habits, repeated daily, that create the biggest shifts. Most people overlook this simple truth because the results aren't immediately visible. But, like the butterfly effect, where the smallest action can cause a chain reaction, small improvements add up to something monumental over time. In fact, the math backs this up. Getting just 1% better each day will lead to you becoming 37.78 times better by the end of the year. The key is not in trying to make massive strides, but in focusing on those daily, incremental gains. Let's imagine for a moment that you're piloting a plane. You set off from New York, intending to land in Los Angeles. Now, what if you adjusted the plane's course by just 3 degrees, a nearly imperceptible change of about 80 inches? You wouldn't even notice the shift at first, but by the time you reach the West Coast, you wouldn't land in Los Angeles. Instead, you'd be closer to Tijuana in Mexico. This is exactly how habits work. Tiny adjustments in our daily behavior can alter the trajectory of our lives in profound ways, for better or worse, depending on the direction we're moving. When people think of success, they often equate it with grand actions, launching a business, winning an award, or achieving a huge milestone. But in reality, success is the accumulation of small habits over time. The daily choices you make, the seemingly insignificant actions you repeat, are what shape your future. The key here is the word repeat. If you want to create massive results, you have to focus on the things you do regularly, not the things you do once in a while. Take, for example, an athlete who trains daily. The workout they do on any given day might not seem like much, but compounded over weeks, months, and years, that training transforms their body, mind, and performance. On the flip side, if someone consistently neglects their health by eating poorly, skipping workouts, or not getting enough sleep, the negative effects compound too, and over time, they find themselves far away from where they wanted to be. It's not just about health. This applies to every area of life. If you read just 1 page of a book each day, that doesn't seem like much. But by the end of the year, you could have finished multiple books. If you spend just a few minutes practicing a skill each day, over time, those minutes add up to hours of mastery. And the same is true in reverse. Every time you skip a positive action or engage in a negative one, those decisions compound, taking you further from your goals. This is why understanding the power of habits is crucial. Success isn't built on grand gestures. It's built on the small, almost invisible actions we take every single day. And the good news is that you don't have to overhaul your entire life to see results. In fact, trying to do so usually leads to burnout and failure. Instead, the focus should be on making small, sustainable improvements. Aim for just 1% better each day. That's it. The math behind this is simple but powerful. If you improve by just 1% each day, you'll end up 37.78 times better by the end of the year. But if you get just 1% worse each day, the opposite happens. You end up closer to 0. This is why habits are so important. They either work for you or against you. The choice is yours. One of the reasons people struggle to make lasting changes is because they expect immediate results. They start a new habit, going to the gym, eating healthier, waking up earlier, and when they don't see noticeable changes within a few days or weeks, they give up. This is where the concept of compounding comes in. Small changes often go unnoticed in the beginning, but over time they add up to something much bigger. Think of it like a snowball rolling down a hill. At first it's small and insignificant, but as it rolls, it gathers more snow, growing larger and larger until it becomes an unstoppable force. The same is true with habits. The small actions you take each day might not seem like much at first, but over time they gather momentum and lead to massive results. The key to making this work is consistency. It's not about doing something once in a while, but about showing up every day, even when you don't feel like it. This is where the magic happens. When you make small improvements consistently, day after day, week after week, month after month, you create a compounding effect that leads to exponential growth. But here's the catch. Just as positive habits can compound in your favor, negative habits can compound against you. Every time you skip a workout, eat unhealthy food, or procrastinate on a task, those actions compound and take you further away from your goals. This is why it's so important to be mindful of the habits you're building. Are they moving you closer to the person you want to be, or are they taking you further away? The truth is, your habits are a reflection of your identity. If you want to become 37.78 times better at anything, you have to start by becoming the type of person who can achieve that. This means focusing on small daily actions that align with the person you want to become. This is where identity-based habits come into play, and it's a game changer for anyone looking to make lasting changes in their life. Most people focus on outcomes when trying to change their habits. They set goals like losing weight, running a marathon, or writing a book. But these are outcome-based goals. They focus on the result you want to achieve, not on the process you need to follow to get there. And this is where most people go wrong. When you focus only on the outcome, you're setting yourself up for failure because outcomes are temporary. Even if you achieve the goal, what happens after? Without a process in place, it's easy to slip back into old habits. The better approach is to focus on identity-based habits. Instead of setting a goal to lose 10 pounds, focus on becoming the type of person who leads a healthy lifestyle. Instead of setting a goal to write a book, focus on becoming a writer. When you shift your focus from outcomes to identity, everything changes. Why? Because once something becomes part of your identity, it's much easier to stick with the habits that align with that identity. You're not just someone who goes to the gym occasionally. You're an athlete. You're not just someone who writes every now and then. You're a writer. This shift in identity is powerful because it changes how you see yourself and, by extension, how you behave. For example, let's say your goal is to run a marathon. Instead of focusing solely on the outcome, completing the race, focus on becoming a runner. Start small. Maybe you run for just 5 minutes a day. That's it. But every time you run, you're reinforcing your identity as a runner. Over time, as this identity becomes more ingrained, your behavior will naturally start to align with that identity. You'll start running longer distances, training more consistently, and eventually, completing a marathon will be the natural result of the habits you've built. The same applies to any habit you want to develop. If you want to read more, don't just set a goal to read a certain number of books. Instead, focus on becoming a reader. Start by reading 1 page a day. It doesn't seem like much, but it's not about the number of pages you read. It's about reinforcing the identity of being a reader. Once you see yourself as someone who reads, it becomes easier to prioritize reading and make it a consistent habit. The key here is to focus on the person you want to become, not just the result you want to achieve. When you shift your focus to identity-based habits, you're setting yourself up for long-term success because you're creating a sustainable system for change. Another reason identity-based habits are so effective is that they help you overcome the common challenges that come with building new habits. One of the biggest challenges people face is self-doubt. When you're trying to build a new habit, it's easy to feel like you're not the type of person who can succeed. You might think, "I'm not a runner," or "I'm not a healthy person," and this mindset can sabotage your progress. But when you focus on identity-based habits, you're gradually changing how you see yourself. Each small action you take reinforces your new identity. Every time you go for a run, you're proving to yourself that you are a runner. Every time you choose a healthy meal, you're proving to yourself that you are someone who makes healthy choices. Over time, these small actions build confidence, and you start to believe in your ability to succeed. The same principle applies to bad habits. If you want to break a bad habit, you need to shift your identity away from the behaviors that support that habit. For example, if you're trying to quit smoking, instead of focusing solely on the outcome, not smoking, focus on becoming a non-smoker. Every time you resist the urge to smoke, you're reinforcing your identity as a non-smoker. This shift in identity makes it easier to resist temptation because you're not just avoiding smoking, you're living up to your new identity. It's important to note that identity-based habits don't happen overnight. Just like with any other habit, it takes time and consistency to see results. But the more you focus on becoming the person you want to be, the easier it becomes to build and maintain habits that support that identity. So, how do you start building identity-based habits? It all begins with a simple question: who do I want to become? Take some time to reflect on the type of person you want to be in different areas of your life. Do you want to be someone who is healthy and fit? Do you want to be someone who reads and learns every day? Do you want to be someone who is productive and focused at work? Once you've identified the person you want to become, start taking small actions that reinforce that identity. Remember, it's not about making drastic changes all at once. It's about making small, incremental improvements each day. Over time, these small actions will compound, and you'll start to see yourself as the person you want to be. For example, if you want to become a more organized person, start by decluttering one small area of your home or workspace each day. If you want to become more disciplined, start by setting a small, manageable goal each day and sticking to it. These actions may seem small, but they're powerful because they're helping you build a new identity. As you continue to take small actions that align with your desired identity, you'll start to notice a shift in how you see yourself. You'll begin to believe that you are the type of person who can achieve your goals. And once you believe that, everything else becomes easier. Becoming 37.78 times better at anything is not about making one big change. It's about making small, consistent improvements every day. And the best way to do that is by focusing on becoming the person you want to be, not just achieving the results you want. When you shift your focus to identity-based habits, you're not just changing your behavior, you're changing your life. In the end, success is not about what you do once in a while. It's about what you do consistently. And when you focus on building habits that align with your identity, you set yourself on a path to becoming the best version of yourself, one small step at a time. As we delve deeper into the process of building lasting habits, it's crucial to understand how habits are formed in the first place. At the core of every habit is a feedback loop, a process of repetition and reward that reinforces behavior over time. This feedback loop is often referred to as the habit loop, and it's made up of 4 key stages: cue, craving, response, and reward. Understanding how these stages work together can help you take control of your habits, allowing you to shape them rather than letting them shape you. Let's start with the first stage, cue. The cue is the trigger that initiates a behavior. It could be anything from a specific time of day to a certain place or a particular feeling. For example, if you have a habit of snacking while watching TV, the act of sitting down in front of the television might be the cue that triggers your craving for a snack. Or, if you always check your phone first thing in the morning, the sound of your alarm could be the cue that initiates this behavior. Cues are everywhere, and they play a huge role in shaping our habits, both good and bad. The key to building better habits is to become aware of the cues that trigger your behaviors. Once you identify these cues, you can start to manipulate them to create new habits or eliminate old ones. For example, if you want to start exercising in the morning, you can use your morning routine as a cue to trigger this new behavior. By setting out your workout clothes the night before and placing them in a visible location, you're creating a cue that will remind you to exercise when you wake up. Next comes the craving stage. Cravings are the motivational force behind every habit. They're what drive you to take action in response to the cue. However, cravings are not about the habit itself. They're about the feeling you hope to achieve by engaging in the habit. For example, if you crave a snack while watching TV, it's not the snack itself that you're craving, but the feeling of satisfaction or comfort that comes from eating it. Or if you check your phone first thing in the morning, it's not the act of checking your phone that you crave, but the sense of connection or information you get from it. Understanding your cravings is essential if you want to change your habits. You need to dig deeper and ask yourself, what is it that I'm really craving here? Once you identify the underlying craving, you can start to find healthier ways to satisfy it. For example, if you crave a sense of relaxation after a long day at work, instead of turning to junk food, you could develop a new habit of reading a book or practicing meditation. The goal is to find behaviors that provide the same reward without the negative consequences. Now we move to the response stage. The response is the actual habit or behavior you engage in. This could be anything from reaching for a snack to going for a run or checking your phone. The key to building a good habit is to make the response as easy as possible. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, emphasizes the importance of reducing friction for positive habits and increasing friction for negative ones. This means making it easier to engage in good habits and harder to engage in bad ones. For example, if you want to make a habit of going to the gym after work, you could pack your gym bag the night before and leave it by the door. This reduces the friction between you and your desired habit. On the other hand, if you want to break the habit of watching too much TV, you could make it harder to access by putting the remote in another room or even unplugging the TV. By increasing the friction, you're less likely to engage in the habit. Finally, we reach the reward stage. The reward is what reinforces the habit and makes you want to repeat it in the future. It's the feeling of satisfaction, pleasure, or relief that comes from completing the habit. The stronger the reward, the more likely you are to repeat the habit. This is why it's important to find ways to make your habits rewarding. For example, if you're trying to develop a habit of exercising, you might reward yourself with a small treat after each workout or track your progress visually by marking off each day on a calendar. These small rewards can provide the motivation needed to stick with the habit over the long term. It's also important to be aware of how rewards can reinforce bad habits. For example, if you eat a piece of cake every time you're stressed, the feeling of relief you get from eating the cake acts as a reward, reinforcing the habit and making it more likely that you'll turn to food the next time you're stressed. To break these habits, you need to find new ways to reward yourself that don't have the same negative consequences. In summary, the habit loop, cue, craving, response, and reward explains how habits are formed and maintained. By understanding this loop, you can start to take control of your habits. You can manipulate cues to trigger new behaviors, address cravings in healthier ways, make positive responses easier and more automatic, and reinforce your habits with satisfying rewards. This is the foundation of habit formation and the key to becoming 37.78 times better at anything over time. Now, while understanding the habit loop is essential, there's one major challenge that trips up many people on their journey to building better habits: the valley of disappointment. This is where most people give up, but pushing through this phase can be the difference between success and failure. When we start working toward any new goal, whether it's learning a new skill, losing weight, or building a habit, we often expect progress to be linear. We think that the more effort we put in, the more immediate results we'll see. But reality doesn't work that way. Progress is often much slower at the beginning, and this can be incredibly frustrating. This slow start is what James Clear calls the valley of disappointment. In the valley of disappointment, you're putting in the effort, showing up every day, and doing all the right things, but you don't see the results you were hoping for. It feels like you're spinning your wheels and getting nowhere. For example, let's say you've started going to the gym regularly. You've been working out for weeks, but when you look in the mirror, your body looks the same. Or maybe you've been trying to write a book, but after months of writing, you're still stuck in the early chapters. This is the valley of disappointment, where your hard work hasn't yet paid off, and it feels like it never will. This is the point where most people give up. They get discouraged by the lack of immediate results and fall back into their old habits. But here's the truth: the most powerful outcomes of any compounding process are delayed. The reason you don't see results right away is that the benefits of your efforts are still accumulating in the background. Just because you don't see immediate progress doesn't mean you aren't making progress. Think of it like planting a tree. When you first plant the seed, you don't see anything happening above the surface. But below the surface, the seed is sprouting roots, digging deep into the soil, preparing to grow. The same is true with your habits. In the early stages, the results are invisible because the growth is happening internally. You're building the foundation for future success. This is why patience is so important when building new habits. You have to be willing to push through the valley of disappointment and trust that the results will come with time. The people who achieve the most in life are often the ones who are willing to stick with something long after most people have given up. The key to surviving the valley of disappointment is to focus on the process, not the results. If you're only focused on the outcome, whether that's losing weight, building a business, or mastering a skill, you'll get discouraged when the results don't come quickly enough. But if you focus on the process, the daily habits and actions that will eventually lead to success, you'll be able to keep going even when the results aren't visible yet. For example, if your goal is to run a marathon, instead of focusing on how many miles you can run right now, focus on showing up for your training runs every day. Trust that as long as you stick to the process, the results will come in time. If your goal is to lose weight, instead of obsessing over the number on the scale, focus on making healthy choices each day. Over time, those choices will compound and the weight will come off. The valley of disappointment is a test of your patience and persistence. Most people fail this test because they're too focused on immediate gratification. They want to see results now, and when they don't, they give up. But the people who succeed are the ones who understand that real progress takes time. They keep showing up, even when it feels like nothing is happening, because they know that success is on the other side of the valley of disappointment. It's also important to celebrate small wins along the way. When you're in the valley of disappointment, it's easy to get discouraged because you're not seeing the big results you were hoping for. But if you focus on the small wins, the little signs of progress, you'll stay motivated to keep going. Maybe you didn't lose 10 pounds this month, but you lost 2 pounds. Or maybe you didn't write an entire chapter, but you wrote a few pages. These small wins are evidence that you're moving in the right direction, even if the progress is slower than you'd like. In the end, the valley of disappointment is where real success is built. It's the phase where most people give up, but it's also the phase where the seeds of greatness are planted. If you can push through this phase and stay focused on the process, you'll come out the other side stronger, more resilient, and much closer to your goals. And when the results finally start to show, you'll realize that all those small, seemingly insignificant actions you took were the building blocks of your success. So remember, when you're in the valley of disappointment, don't give up. Keep showing up, keep putting in the work, and trust that the results will come. Success isn't about what you do in the short term. It's about what you do consistently over time. And if you can stay the course, you'll eventually break through and achieve the results you've been working for. As we move forward, it's time to explore how the environment shapes our habits in ways we might not even realize. The truth is, no matter how strong our willpower or motivation is, the environment we place ourselves in can significantly impact whether or not we stick to our habits. The key to building lasting habits is to take control of your surroundings and design them in a way that makes it easier to maintain positive habits and harder to engage in negative ones. Most people believe they fail at habits because of a lack of willpower, but willpower is not the problem. Instead, the real issue lies in the environment we create around ourselves. Our environment is filled with cues that either trigger good habits or tempt us into bad ones. The key is learning how to prime your environment so that it nudges you toward the habits you want to develop while discouraging the ones you want to eliminate. Take a moment to think about your current environment. If you want to read more, where are your books? Are they in a closet somewhere, out of sight and out of mind? If so, it's no wonder you forget to read. But if your books were placed visibly on your desk or next to your bed, you would be much more likely to pick one up and read a few pages. This is a simple example of how a small change in your environment can make a huge difference in your behavior. The same goes for negative habits. If you want to stop eating junk food, what's the first step? Most people think it's about willpower and resisting temptation, but the easiest and most effective solution is to remove the junk food from your environment entirely. If there's no junk food in your house, you won't be tempted to eat it. Out of sight, out of mind. This is why the saying, "cut off bad habits at the source," is so effective. You can't rely on self-control forever. It's much easier to design your environment so that the bad habits are less accessible in the first place. One of the most powerful tools for shaping your environment is the principle of one space, one use. This means dedicating specific spaces in your environment for specific activities. For example, if you use your living room for watching TV, avoid trying to work or study in that same space. When you try to do two conflicting activities in the same space, it creates a mental association that makes it harder to focus on the task at hand. Instead, create zones for each activity. Your workspace should be for working, your dining table for eating, and your bedroom for sleeping. When you consistently use each space for its intended purpose, your brain begins to associate that space with the specific activity, making it easier to focus and build habits. Let's look at an example of how environment shaping can make a habit easier. Imagine you're trying to build a habit of exercising in the morning. One of the most effective ways to make this habit stick is to prime your environment the night before. Lay out your workout clothes, set your shoes by the door, and place your water bottle in the fridge. By doing this, you're reducing the friction between waking up and working out. When you wake up, everything is ready for you to begin, and there are fewer excuses to skip the workout. This concept is known as reducing friction, and it's one of the most effective ways to build new habits. Reducing friction works for just about any habit. If you want to eat healthier, make sure your kitchen is stocked with healthy foods and that they're easily accessible. Keep fruits and vegetables at eye level in the fridge and place healthy snacks where you can see them. On the flip side, you can increase friction for bad habits. If you want to stop watching so much TV, unplug the TV after each use or put the remote in a drawer. By adding extra steps to engage in a bad habit, you make it less likely that you'll follow through. Another powerful technique is habit stacking. This involves tying a new habit to an existing habit, using the existing habit as a trigger for the new one. For example, if you already have a habit of making coffee every morning, you can stack a new habit on top of it. After you make your coffee, you can read for 10 minutes or stretch for a few minutes. By linking the new habit to something you already do, you create a natural cue that makes it easier to stick to the new habit. This works because your brain is already used to the routine of making coffee, so adding a new action right after it feels natural. Your environment is also made up of the people around you. Group influence plays a huge role in shaping our habits. As humans, we are naturally influenced by the behaviors of those closest to us. If your friends and family have certain habits, whether positive or negative, you're more likely to adopt them. This is why surrounding yourself with people who share the habits you want to build can be incredibly powerful. If you want to get in shape, join a fitness group or surround yourself with people who value health and exercise. If you want to read more, spend time with people who enjoy reading. By shaping your environment and surrounding yourself with people who support your goals, you can make it much easier to build and maintain the habits you want. The key is to design your environment in a way that naturally encourages the behaviors you want and discourages the behaviors you don't. Now that you understand the power of environment, let's shift focus to one of the most misunderstood aspects of habit formation: goals versus systems. Most people are taught to focus on goals, but if you want lasting change, you need to shift your focus to systems instead. Goals are the results you want to achieve. They're the specific outcomes you aim for, like losing 10 pounds, writing a book, or saving a certain amount of money. Goals give you direction and help you identify what you want to accomplish, but they have a major flaw. They focus too much on the result and not enough on the process. Achieving a goal is a one-time event, but maintaining success requires a system. This is why many people fail to sustain their progress after reaching a goal. They reach the finish line and then fall back into their old habits because they didn't build a system to support long-term success. Systems, on the other hand, are the processes and routines that lead to your goals. They are the daily actions you take that move you toward your desired outcome, even if the outcome isn't immediately visible. For example, if your goal is to write a book, the system would be writing a certain number of words each day. If your goal is to get in shape, the system would be exercising regularly and eating a healthy diet. Systems are what create consistent progress over time, and they're much more reliable than goals. Here's the truth. Successful and unsuccessful people share the same goals. Everyone wants to be healthy, wealthy, and happy, but not everyone achieves those goals. Why? Because the difference between success and failure is not the goal itself, but the system that supports it. Goals are good for setting a direction, but systems are what actually make progress possible. A common problem with goals is that they create an either-or mindset. You either achieve the goal and succeed, or you don't and you fail. But what happens after you achieve the goal? If your goal was to run a marathon, what do you do once the marathon is over? Most people lose their motivation after reaching a goal because the process they followed was tied to that specific outcome. Once the outcome is achieved, the system collapses. This is why so many people revert to their old habits after reaching a goal. They were focused on the result, not the process. Another problem with goals is that they create a false sense of accomplishment. You might set a goal to lose weight, but if you're only focused on the outcome, you may not develop the long-term habits needed to maintain that weight loss. You'll see this pattern in people who go on strict diets. They lose weight quickly, but once the diet ends, they revert to their old eating habits and gain the weight back. Why? Because they didn't build a system for sustainable, healthy living. This is why systems are so important. They focus on the process, not the result. And when you focus on the process, progress becomes inevitable. You don't have to worry about achieving the goal, because the system will take care of it. If you follow the system, writing every day, exercising regularly, eating healthy, the results will naturally follow. To create a system, start by identifying the daily actions that will move you toward your goal. Break your goal down into small, manageable steps that can be repeated consistently. Instead of setting a goal to write a book, set a system to write 500 words every day. Instead of setting a goal to lose 10 pounds, set a system to exercise for 30 minutes each day and eat balanced meals. The key is to focus on consistency and improvement, not perfection. One of the best things about focusing on systems instead of goals is that systems create freedom. When you have a system in place, you don't have to constantly think about the outcome or stress about whether or not you'll achieve your goal. The system takes care of that. You can trust the process and know that if you stick to the system, the results will come in time. In summary, while goals are useful for setting direction, systems are what lead to real, sustainable progress. By focusing on the daily actions and routines that support your desired outcome, you can create consistent improvements that compound over time. Remember, success is not about achieving a goal once. It's about building a system that makes success inevitable. Now that you understand the importance of systems, it's time to shift your focus from setting specific, outcome-based goals to building the processes that will get you there. Once you have the right systems in place, you'll find that progress becomes automatic, and you'll no longer need to rely on fleeting motivation or willpower to achieve your goals. Now that we've covered how environment and systems play pivotal roles in shaping your habits and ensuring success, it's time to address one of the most practical and powerful tools for making sure your habits stick: the 2-minute rule. This simple yet effective strategy is all about making it easier to start a habit, reducing friction, and breaking the cycle of procrastination. By mastering the 2-minute rule, you'll be able to build momentum in any area of your life with minimal effort and commitment. One of the biggest obstacles to habit formation is the feeling of being overwhelmed by the task. You know you need to exercise, but the thought of a full workout feels daunting. You want to read more, but you can't find the time or energy to commit to an hour of reading each day. This is where the 2-minute rule comes in. Instead of aiming for the entire task, you simply start by doing it for 2 minutes. The idea is to scale the habit down to its simplest form, so easy that it requires almost no effort to start. The logic behind the 2-minute rule is simple. Make it easy to begin, and once you're started, you'll often find that it's easier to keep going. This rule is based on the principle that the hardest part of any task is often just getting started. Once you overcome the initial resistance, your momentum takes over, and you're much more likely to continue. The key to building any habit is consistency, and by lowering the bar for what counts as success, the 2-minute rule ensures that you always start. Let's look at an example. If you're trying to build the habit of working out every morning, don't set a goal of a full 30-minute workout right away. Instead, commit to doing just 2 minutes of exercise. This could mean putting on your workout clothes and stretching, or doing a set of push-ups. The goal isn't to accomplish a full workout, but to start building the routine. More often than not, once you've started moving, you'll feel motivated to continue beyond the 2 minutes. Even on the days when you really don't feel like it, showing up for 2 minutes is still a win because it reinforces the habit of exercising. Another example might be reading. If you want to read more books but struggle to find the time, start by committing to reading for just 2 minutes a day. Anyone can find 2 minutes in their schedule, and once you start reading, you'll often find yourself going beyond the 2 minutes. But even if you stop after the 2 minutes, you've still succeeded in showing up and reinforcing the habit. The reason the 2-minute rule is so effective is that it focuses on the process of showing up, not the outcome. The goal isn't to complete a full workout or finish a chapter of a book. It's to reinforce the identity of being the type of person who exercises or reads daily. By consistently showing up for 2 minutes, you build the foundation of the habit, and over time, you can gradually increase the duration and intensity of the activity. One of the key benefits of the 2-minute rule is that it helps you avoid the trap of perfectionism. When we set high expectations for ourselves, we often get paralyzed by the fear of not being able to meet them. This leads to procrastination as we put off starting because the task feels too big or overwhelming. The 2-minute rule removes this pressure by making the goal so small that it's impossible to fail. You don't need to be perfect or achieve something great every time. You just need to show up for 2 minutes. Over time, as you consistently apply the 2-minute rule, you'll start to build a habit of showing up. This is the foundation of habit formation, and once the habit is established, you can begin to build on it. If you've been exercising for 2 minutes a day, you can gradually increase the time to 5 minutes, then 10, and so on. The key is that by starting small, you make it easy to begin, and once the habit is in place, you can scale it up. Another benefit of the 2-minute rule is that it helps you overcome procrastination. One of the main reasons people procrastinate is that they feel overwhelmed by the size of the task in front of them. The 2-minute rule breaks the task down into a manageable, bite-sized piece that feels easy to start. Once you've started, the inertia of procrastination is broken and it becomes much easier to keep going. For tasks you dread or find difficult, the 2-minute rule can be a game changer. For example, if you need to clean the house but keep putting it off, start by committing to just 2 minutes of cleaning. Set a timer and focus on cleaning one small area. Once you've started, you might find that you're motivated to keep going and clean for longer. But even if you stop after 2 minutes, you've still made progress. The 2-minute rule also works for habits you want to eliminate. By applying the reverse concept, you can make it harder to start bad habits by increasing the friction or time required to engage in them. For example, if you want to reduce the amount of time you spend on social media, you can use the 2-minute rule in reverse by creating a rule that you can only check social media for 2 minutes at a time. By limiting the duration of the habit, you reduce the likelihood of getting sucked into an endless scroll. It's important to remember that the goal of the 2-minute rule is to create momentum. Once you've built the habit of starting, you can gradually increase the duration and intensity of the activity. But the most important thing is to start small and be consistent. Habits are built through repetition, and by consistently showing up for just 2 minutes a day, you'll be reinforcing the identity of the person you want to become. To make the 2-minute rule even more effective, you can combine it with other habit-building strategies, such as habit stacking or environment design. For example, you can stack your 2-minute habit on top of an existing habit by saying, "After I brush my teeth, I will exercise for 2 minutes." Or you can prime your environment to make it easier to start your 2-minute habit by setting out your workout clothes the night before. The 2-minute rule is a powerful tool because it eliminates the excuses that often stop us from building habits. It's easy to say you don't have time to exercise or read for an hour, but it's much harder to say you don't have time for 2 minutes. By lowering the bar for success, The 2-minute rule makes it easier to get started, and once you've started, you'll often find that it's easier to keep going. In summary, the 2-minute rule is a simple yet highly effective strategy for building habits. By reducing the size of the task to something that feels easy to start, you remove the barriers of procrastination and overwhelm. Over time, these small efforts compound into meaningful progress, and before you know it, the habit is fully ingrained in your daily routine. Remember, the key to success is consistency, and the 2-minute rule ensures that you always start, no matter how small the effort. Once you've mastered the art of starting habits with the 2-minute rule, the next step is to make those habits attractive. The more appealing a habit is, the more likely you are to engage in it consistently. The desire to act or craving plays a critical role in whether or not we stick with a habit long term. This chapter is all about understanding how to create positive feedback loops and use the science of motivation to make your habits stick. At the core of habit formation is the idea that our habits are driven by dopamine, the chemical in our brain that makes us feel pleasure and satisfaction. Most people associate dopamine with the reward that comes from completing a habit, but research has shown that dopamine spikes before the action takes place. In other words, it's the anticipation of the reward, not the reward itself, that motivates us to take action. This is why some habits, like checking social media or eating junk food, are so addictive. When you anticipate the pleasure of scrolling through your Instagram feed or eating a piece of chocolate cake, your brain releases dopamine, which creates a craving to engage in the habit. Once the habit is complete, the reward reinforces the behavior, making you more likely to repeat it in the future. To build good habits, you can use this same principle to your advantage. Make the habit attractive by creating positive associations with it. One of the most effective ways to do this is through temptation bundling. This involves pairing a habit you need to do with a habit you want to do. For example, if you want to build the habit of exercising but struggle to stay motivated, you can bundle the habit with something you enjoy, like listening to your favorite podcast or watching a TV show. By linking the habit with an activity you look forward to, you create a craving for the habit itself. Temptation bundling works because it leverages Premack's principle, which states that more probable behaviors can reinforce less probable behaviors. In other words, if there's something you're more likely to do, like watching Netflix, you can use it to reinforce a habit you're less likely to do, like exercising. By combining the two, you make the less probable behavior more appealing, which increases the likelihood that you'll follow through. Another way to make your habits more attractive is to focus on the long-term benefits rather than the immediate discomfort. Many habits, like working out or saving money, come with delayed rewards. You might not see the benefits of exercising after one workout, but over time, the rewards compound. The key is to reframe the habit in a way that makes it feel more rewarding in the moment. For example, instead of focusing on the physical effort of exercising, you can focus on the sense of accomplishment and energy boost you'll get afterward. By shifting your mindset, you make the habit feel more satisfying in the short term, which increases the likelihood that you'll stick with it. Another strategy for making habits more attractive is to join a group where the desired behavior is the norm. We are social creatures, and our habits are heavily influenced by the people around us. If you want to build the habit of reading more, join a book club. If you want to get in shape, surround yourself with people who value fitness. When you're part of a group that reinforces positive habits, you're much more likely to adopt those habits yourself because they become part of your identity within the group. Positive reinforcement is another powerful tool for making habits attractive. When you reward yourself for completing a habit, you create a positive feedback loop that makes the habit more enjoyable. This could be as simple as giving yourself a small treat after a workout or celebrating small wins along the way. The key is to make the reward immediate and tangible so that your brain associates the habit with a sense of pleasure and satisfaction. It's also important to note that the anticipation of a reward is often more powerful than the reward itself. This is why habits like gambling and social media can be so addictive. The excitement comes not from the outcome, but from the anticipation of what might happen. You can use this to your advantage by creating positive anticipation around your habits. For example, if you're trying to build the habit of reading, create a ritual around selecting your next book or setting up a cozy reading space. The more you can build excitement around the habit, the more likely you are to follow through. In summary, making your habits attractive is all about leveraging the power of dopamine and creating positive associations with the behavior. By bundling your habits with activities you enjoy, reframing your mindset to focus on the benefits, and surrounding yourself with people who reinforce positive behaviors, you can make your habits more appealing and easier to stick with over the long term. And remember, the more attractive a habit is, the more likely you are to crave it. And once you create that craving, you're well on your way to becoming 37.78 times better at anything. After mastering the art of making habits easy to start with the 2-minute rule and using strategies to make them attractive, the next crucial step is to ensure that your habits last. One of the best ways to do this is by making your habits satisfying. This concept lies at the heart of why we continue certain behaviors. If a habit feels good, we're much more likely to repeat it. On the other hand, if it feels like a chore or there's no immediate sense of satisfaction, it becomes harder to stick with over time. The human brain is wired to prioritize immediate rewards over long-term ones. This is why many people struggle to develop good habits, even when they know the long-term benefits. For example, eating junk food provides an immediate sense of pleasure, even though it negatively impacts your health in the long run. Conversely, going to the gym or saving money doesn't always provide instant gratification, making it harder to stay motivated. The key to making habits stick is to find ways to add immediate satisfaction to behaviors that don't inherently provide it. One powerful tool for doing this is visual tracking. When you can see tangible evidence of your progress, it creates a sense of accomplishment that reinforces the habit. This is why many people find success with habit trackers, whether it's a simple calendar where you mark off each day you complete a habit, or a more elaborate system using apps. By tracking your progress visually, you get an immediate sense of satisfaction every time you check off a task, which motivates you to keep going. This practice of not breaking the chain has been famously used by people in various fields, from writers to athletes, and it's incredibly effective in building consistency. The act of seeing your progress reinforces your identity as someone who follows through on their habits. It might seem small, but that little check mark on the calendar can make a big difference. It signals to your brain, "I'm the type of person who works out every day," or "I'm the type of person who reads every night." Over time, this sense of identity becomes more deeply ingrained, and the habit becomes part of who you are. Another way to make habits satisfying is by using immediate rewards. This doesn't mean indulging in a cheat meal every time you go to the gym, but rather finding small ways to celebrate your successes. For example, after completing a difficult task, you might take a 5-minute break to relax or enjoy something you find pleasant, like watching a short video or having a cup of tea. The key is to make the reward tied directly to the habit and to make it something you genuinely look forward to. Over time, your brain will begin to associate the habit with the positive feeling of the reward, making it easier to stick with. It's important to understand the difference between short-term satisfaction and long-term reward. Many bad habits, like smoking or eating unhealthy food, provide immediate pleasure but long-term harm. Good habits often work in reverse. They might feel challenging or unpleasant in the moment, but they offer significant long-term benefits. The challenge, then, is to bridge the gap between action and reward by finding ways to make positive habits feel more immediately satisfying. One effective way to do this is through the use of habit contracts and accountability partners. A habit contract is an agreement you make with yourself or someone else to complete a habit, and there's a consequence if you fail to follow through. For example, you might agree to pay a friend $10 if you miss a workout, or you could commit to doing a household chore if you skip your daily writing session. This creates an immediate consequence for not following through on the habit, which adds a layer of accountability. Knowing that there's a penalty for missing a habit can provide the extra motivation you need to stay consistent. Accountability partners work in a similar way. By sharing your goals with someone else, you create a sense of responsibility to follow through, knowing that someone else is keeping track of your progress. This can be incredibly effective, especially if you find someone who is equally committed to building their own habits. You can motivate and support each other, and the fear of letting your partner down can be a powerful motivator to stick with your habits. Finally, it's essential to remember that satisfaction doesn't always come from the task itself, but from the sense of progress and improvement. Humans are hardwired to seek growth and mastery, and the feeling of getting better at something can be immensely satisfying. This is why tracking small wins and celebrating milestones is so important. Every time you see yourself improve, whether it's lifting heavier weights at the gym, reading more pages in a book, or saving more money, you're reinforcing the habit by tapping into the brain's natural desire for progress. In summary, the most important rule of behavior change is to make it satisfying. By adding immediate rewards, tracking your progress visually, and using accountability tools like habit contracts and partners, you can make even the most challenging habits feel more enjoyable and rewarding. The more satisfying a habit is, the more likely you are to repeat it, and repetition is the key to making any behavior stick. No matter how committed you are to your habits, setbacks are inevitable. Life gets busy, unexpected events happen, and sometimes you just don't feel like sticking to your routine. The important thing isn't whether you experience setbacks, it's how quickly you recover from them. In this final chapter, we'll discuss how to handle habit breakdowns and how to get back on track without losing momentum. One of the biggest mistakes people make when trying to build habits is expecting perfection. They set an ambitious goal, like working out every day or writing for an hour each morning, and when they inevitably miss a day, they get discouraged. This often leads to an all-or-nothing mentality, where missing one day feels like complete failure, so they give up entirely. But here's the truth. Missing one day is not the end of the world. It's what you do after that matters. The key is to have a plan in place for when you fall off track, so you can recover quickly and minimize the damage. James Clear calls this the 2-day rule. You can miss one day, but never 2 days in a row. This rule is powerful because it gives you permission to have an off day without feeling like you've failed. At the same time, it sets a clear boundary that prevents small slips from turning into long-term failures. Let's say you're trying to build the habit of meditating every morning, but one day you oversleep and miss your session. According to the 2-day rule, that's okay. Life happens. But the next day, you must get back to your routine. By allowing yourself to miss one day but not 2, you avoid the slippery slope of letting a small mistake snowball into a bigger problem. One way to ensure you recover quickly from setbacks is to have a recovery plan in place before you even start building the habit. This could include scheduling a specific time to revisit your habit if you miss a session, setting a reminder to get back on track, or reaching out to your accountability partner for extra support. The key is to make sure you don't leave your recovery to chance. By having a clear plan, you eliminate the uncertainty and guilt that often comes with missed habits. Another important strategy for handling setbacks is to focus on the long game. Habits are not about perfection, they're about consistency over time. If you miss one workout or skip a day of writing, it's just a small blip in the larger picture. What matters is that you continue showing up over weeks, months, and years. The difference between someone who achieves their goals and someone who doesn't isn't that the successful person never fails. It's that they get back on track more quickly. It's also essential to reframe how you view failure. Instead of seeing a missed habit as a sign that you've failed, view it as an opportunity to learn and improve. Ask yourself why you missed the habit. Was it because you were too tired, too busy, or simply forgot? By identifying the cause of the setback, you can make adjustments to prevent it from happening in the future. Maybe you need to tweak your routine, lower your expectations, or build in more flexibility. The goal is to use setbacks as feedback, not as an excuse to quit. One helpful tool for preventing setbacks from derailing your progress is habit tracking. By keeping a record of your habits, you can quickly spot patterns and identify when you're at risk of slipping. For example, if you notice that you're consistently missing your workouts on weekends, you can adjust your schedule to make those days easier or less demanding. The simple act of tracking your habits makes you more aware of your behavior, which increases your chances of staying on track. Another way to bounce back from setbacks is to focus on small wins. When you've fallen off track, it can be tempting to try and make up for lost time by going all in, but this often leads to burnout and frustration. Instead, focus on getting back to the basics. Start small, with the 2-minute rule, and build your way back up. The goal is to re-establish the habit, not to make up for lost progress in one go. By celebrating small wins, you create positive momentum that makes it easier to keep going. It's also worth remembering that life is unpredictable, and sometimes setbacks are beyond your control. Whether it's an illness, a family emergency, or a busy period at work, there will be times when sticking to your habits is more challenging. In these situations, it's important to practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself and recognize that missing a few days doesn't mean you've failed. The most important thing is to stay committed to the process and get back on track as soon as you can. Finally, if you find that you're struggling to recover from a habit breakdown, it might be a sign that your system needs tweaking. Maybe the habit is too ambitious, the timing is off, or your environment isn't supportive. Take a step back and reevaluate your approach. Don't be afraid to experiment and make adjustments until you find a system that works for you. In summary, setbacks are a natural part of the habit-building process. The key to success is not avoiding failure, but recovering quickly when it happens. By following the 2-day rule, having a recovery plan in place, tracking your habits, and focusing on small wins, you can bounce back from setbacks and stay on track in the long term. Remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about showing up consistently and making progress over time. When you adopt this mindset, you'll find that you can weather any setback and continue your journey to becoming 37.78 times better at anything.